All right, let's get right into it. We're going to tackle a topic it's really at the intersection of medical science, personal dreams, and a country's core values. We're talking about the incredibly complex question of surrogacy in Singapore. And this is a story that's just full of legal gray zones, ethical minefields, and at its heart, that powerful, universal desire to build a family.
So, right at the heart of this whole thing is this striking paradox. Get this. In Singapore, you can't get a surrogacy procedure done. It's completely banned in all local medical facilities. But, and this is a big but, there's no law that actually stops the citizen from hopping on a plane and doing it somewhere else. And it's this kind of legal loophole that creates this really challenging and frankly fascinating reality that we're going to unpack.
And this isn't just some legal technicality we're talking about. What this does is it forces a deeply personal journey into a completely unregulated, high-stakes international space. And when things go wrong out there, well, the consequences can be absolutely devastating for everyone involved.
I mean, the human cost can be just gut-wrenching. Take the story of baby Gammy. He was a child with Down syndrome, born to a Thai surrogate. When his commissioning Australian parents found out about his condition, they reportedly tried to get the surrogate to terminate the pregnancy. She refused. So what did they do? They took his healthy twin sister and just left Gammy behind. That case just blew up, and it became this international symbol of the profound ethical risks, especially when it comes to the exploitation of vulnerable women.
And you see, that one story, it just lays bare the whole range of potential disasters. When you don't have a clear legal framework, intended parents can get trapped in a total legal nightmare. You have kids who can be left stateless, and the surrogate mothers, who are so often in vulnerable financial situations, they're left with pretty much zero protection. The stakes just couldn't be higher. Okay, so this brings up the obvious question, right? Why not just legalize and regulate it in Singapore? Well, because doing that means opening a total Pandora's box of incredibly difficult ethical, legal, and social questions.
The whole debate really gets tangled up in three key areas. You've got the ethical questions. Is this helping people or is it exploiting them? Then there's the legal side. Who exactly is the mother here? And finally, the social angle. What does this all say about our community's values? So let's break each one of those down.
All right, first up, let's talk ethics. And honestly, it really comes down to one thing: money. Should surrogacy be purely altruistic, where a woman is only paid back for her direct expenses? Or should it be a commercial thing, where she gets a significant fee for her time, for the use of her body, and for the huge risks she's taking on?
And here's the thing, both paths are just loaded with ethical traps. I mean, commercial surrogacy? That raises the really obvious fear of exploiting women in need, basically turning their bodies into a commodity. But then again, a purely altruistic model, does that really compensate a woman for the incredible physical and emotional journey of a pregnancy? Probably not. And that's before we even get to other messy questions, like should surrogacy only be for a real medical need? Or could it just become a lifestyle choice for some?
Okay, now for the legal challenges. And trust me, they are just as complex. It all boils down to what sounds like a really simple question. When a child is born through a surrogate, who is the legal mother? The answer, though, is anything but simple.
Yeah, different places have radically different answers to that question. So, Singaporean law, which is a lot like the UK's, is built on a super simple rule. The woman who gives birth is the legal mother, full stop. And think about what that means. It means the intended parents, even if they're the biological parents, have to go through the whole process of formally adopting their own child. And get this, that adoption isn't even guaranteed. Now compare that to a place like California. They have this idea of parenthood by intent, which means the intended parents are considered the legal parents from day one. Totally different worlds. And finally, you can't talk about this without understanding Singapore's social fabric. There's this really strong cultural belief in prioritizing society above self, basically putting the community's good before individual desires. And believe me, that core value shapes every single part of this conversation.
And you have to remember, Singapore is a deeply multi-religious society. So for a lot of the major religious groups here, surrogacy isn't just a legal issue, it's a serious moral one. Then you layer that on top of cultural values that often put a huge emphasis on carrying on the family bloodline, and suddenly you have this incredibly complex social landscape that policymakers have to try and navigate.
So with all of these challenges on the table, it makes a ton of sense to look abroad, right? How have other countries tried to solve this puzzle? Well, it turns out there's a whole spectrum of different approaches out there for Singapore to look at and learn from.
And this is where you can really see the contrast. On one side, you've got places like the UK and Hong Kong, which actually share Singapore's legal roots. They lean towards these restrictive, altruistic models where surrogacy contracts basically aren't worth the paper they're written on. You can't enforce them in court. Then on the complete other side, you've got California. They've totally embraced a regulated commercial model that's built on ironclad, enforceable contracts. It's just two completely different philosophies on how to balance the needs of the parents, the surrogate, and of course the child.
So when you take all of this into account, what would a path forward for Singapore actually look like? I mean, if legalization is even on the table, what kind of uniquely Singaporean solution could possibly work?
Well, what many experts are proposing is a really cautious, step-by-step approach. The idea isn't to just open the floodgates, not at all. Instead, it's more like, let's start with a very narrow, specific group, like, say, married Singaporean citizens who have a clear medical need. And then from there, you'd build in really strong safeguards, like mandatory counseling for everyone involved and requiring case-by-case government approval, just to keep the whole process super tightly controlled.
And really, at the absolute core of this approach are these stringent safeguards. We're talking about rules designed specifically to prevent the exact problems we saw earlier. Things like restricting who can even be a surrogate, defining compensation very clearly to avoid a purely commercial free-for-all, and, this one is so critical, making it legally binding for the parents to accept their child no matter what.
Because at the end of the day, this is about so much more than just laws or medicine. It really comes down to a fundamental question that every society has to ask itself. How do you balance an individual's powerful, deeply personal dream of having a family with the shared values that hold a whole community together? You know, there are no easy answers here, not a single one. And the path a society chooses, well, that reveals everything about what it truly values most.